Next point is to a motion to the floor for nominations of the position of secretary.
Motion.
Second. Any comments from the planning commission or the public? See none. Vote to motion to open the floor for nominations. All in favor?
Favor.
Aye.
Aye.
I nominate Tricia Kaufman.
Second it? I don't second it yet.
All right, any comments from the planning commission or the public? Seeing none, I vote to a motion to close the floor for nominations.
Make a motion to close.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. And, we have a motion to appoint and vote for Tricia Kaufman as the secretary for the planning commission.
Motion.
Second. Any public comments or planning commission comments? Seeing none, vote to approve Tricia Kaufman as the secretary for the planning commission. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you, Tricia.
All right. So we're moving on to the consideration of minutes from our November 13th, 2025 meeting.
I'll make a motion, consideration of minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do you have any comments from the public? Any comments from the planning commission? Seeing none. Vote to approve the minutes from the November meeting, 2025. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I abstained, that was one.
The three that were not, I abstained.
The next order of business is the conditional use application CU 25-04 MCB7 LLC.
Thank you.
And good evening.
Good evening, members of the planning commission. Congratulations on the new appointments and your.
Is your microphone on?
Congratulations on your new appointments and your new officers. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Ed Campbell. I'm an attorney and I represent the applicant. To my right is A.D. Magnata, who is from Labella Engineering, and he is the project coordinator, project manager, so to speak. So let me give you a quick overview of what we'd like to do tonight. Tell you how we intend to proceed, and then get on with it. I'd like to give you a brief overview of the project. You can see it's up on the screen. And then I would like to review with you the review letters that the township staff has prepared. And then we really like the opportunity to hear from you, to hear your thoughts, your comments. We don't expect to finish tonight. We don't expect that you're gonna, we expect that you'll have questions and you'll want us to come back. So we really appreciate the opportunity to come here. We know that we're the only thing on the agenda, and we appreciate that as well. Appreciate your time and appreciate the time of the members of the public who are here. On the screen is a copy of the site plan. And what it demonstrates, or what it shows, is where the property is located, which is, in general, it's bounded by Lightcap Road, Possum Hollow, and to the south, there's a portion of the property that abuts Evergreen, and then Lightcap to the west, Possum Hollow to the north, and as it curls around. It's in close proximity to the nuclear power plant that's immediately to the east of the site. And you can see the significant power facility, power lines that run through it, that run immediately adjacent to the property. The site is about 192 acres. We propose that this is a data center. It's in the data center overlay district. And we've designed the application to comply with the ordinance that the township adopted almost 2 years ago. You'll see on the screen 8 buildings in orange. Those are each the proposed data center buildings. 5 of those buildings are approximately have footprints of approximately 154,000 square feet, and 3 of those buildings have footprints of approximately 202,000 square feet. The total square footage of all of those buildings is approximately 1.4 million, 1,379,000 square feet, so just a little under 1.4 million square feet. One of the provisions in your ordinance requires that no data center building can be within 400 feet of any existing residence, and in fact, there are no buildings, no data center facilities within 400 feet of any existing residence. Adjacent to every one of the orange rectangles, you'll see a gray corresponding rectangle. So every data center is, the data center building itself is where the data center equipment is housed. Immediately adjacent to that, there is a courtyard, and that courtyard has, for lack of a better term, call it a courtyard, has generators. Each building has approximately 40 generators. The smaller buildings might have a few less, the larger buildings may have a few more, but each building has approximately 40 generators. Now, those generators don't operate all the time. Those generators are only used for emergency and backup, so they're there for that purpose. Each building has chillers on the rooftop, and those chillers will all be curtained or screened so that they're not visible, and those chillers are used to cool the data equipment inside. There are 2 additional buildings that are worth noting out, and 2 administrative and logistic buildings. One administrative building is along, I wish I had brought my my laser, my pointer, I apologize. On the right half of it along Possum Hollow Road, I don't know, Greta, if you have your cursor, there's an administrative building up in the corner where Possum Hollow meets Lightcap. Right there, there's an administrative or logistic building. And there's another support building, which is right where you see like the bottom left-hand corner, there's another gray area that's a logistic building. The areas in purple on the plan designate the anticipated sites for stormwater management basins. Thanks, Greta. All right, so. So these orange buildings are the data center buildings themselves. The gray areas next to them are the generator courtyards. The purple area, and all the purple areas are stormwater basins. You've got a auxiliary or support logistics building here, and an auxiliary or support logistics building there. You've got a proposed secondary access off of Evergreen. You've got primary access off of Lightcap. I believe we have one other access point. Significant to note is that right now, Possum Hollow Road runs essentially like this. Mm-hmm. And we were in front of the township about a year ago and proposed the relocation of Possum Hollow so that it follows this area. I think that's consistent with, master township traffic planning and design to relocate the road so it doesn't move through the system. That's part of our development. We've incorporated that as part of the design of the development. You'll see there are facilities here that are essentially electrical substations there and there that are there as part of the project, as an accessory to the project, and relate to the need for power. So that's the substation and switchyard. Every building has its own dedicated parking. You can see it right there, like sort of in between. Every building has sufficient parking for the expected use, probably more parking than may be required. Each building will have its own dedicated set of employees, depending on various factors. You could be 15 to 20 employees per building per shift. The site is also significant in that you've got natural gas pipeline which needs to be relocated that runs through the system. And there's an existing sanitary sewer line that runs through the system that also needs to be relocated. And those are shown on other sheets on the plan. But that's the high-level overview of what the project entails. AJ, any other high-level comments about the project itself that you think I omitted?
The only thing I didn't hear, each building is going to be 2 floors, maximum height 8 feet.
Yeah. The ordinance permits height of 120 feet. The buildings are all, the 8 data center buildings are all 85 feet. The 2 support or logistic buildings are 35 feet, which are all compliant with the township's ordinance. We've received Pannoni's review letter, which reviewed our application. It was originally dated December 5th, and then it was supplemented on December 30th. For the most part, I would tell you that it's a 14-page review letter, and for the most part, our comments are that we'll comply. Those things that aren't, we'll comply. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about tonight. We'll either supplement later or hope that we get some feedback on them. The first item that I would comment on is on page 3, comment 8. Pannoni makes the comment that to the extent that if there are any road improvements that are going to be required, the applicant's going to be required to make those road improvements, and I would just affirm that any road improvements associated with this development are going to be borne by us, and the applicant also has to pay the Township's Act 209 impact fee. While we're on the point of traffic, it's significant to point out that this site was previously approved as a warehouse, and that the anticipated traffic from this use is substantially lower than what was previously approved as a warehouse. So to the extent that people are concerned about traffic, this is very, very low traffic. I can move on to page 4, comment 2. Pannoni points out that this property right here, right about there, is not technically within the LLI overlay district, which allows us to operate as a data center, and it's included in there's 7 lots that are involved. We included that as one because when Possum Hollow is realigned, it will touch on or involve that property. There are no data center buildings, there are no data center accessory uses, there's nothing associated with the data center on that lot. The comment that is in the Pannoni letter is that it should be removed from the application. Our preference is to keep it there with the understanding, the condition that there will be no data center on that property and there'll be no data center accessory uses on that property. It simply programmatically just makes sense as we demonstrate that the Possum Hollow Road will be relocated. On the same page, comment 3, Pannoni references us and takes us to a section in the ordinance talking about conditional use, and it lays out 5 elements for our conditional use. But I will tell you that I believe that we're covering them through the balance of it, so I'm not going to spend time going through each one of them because we go into much more detail about those elements throughout the rest of the report, throughout the rest of the application. Water and sewer is an issue that Pannoni raises on page 5, comment 6, and that's a concern that we're aware of. The people are concerned about water consumption and sewer. So for water, we have a will serve letter from the water utility company allowing us to use approximately 1.3 million gallons of water. Now we know that to do that, there are certain infrastructure improvements that need to be made, and my client's committed to making those improvements, and the facility would never be operated until those are in place. We also have a letter confirming that we have sanitary sewer capacity. The sanitary sewer capacity is really just standard wastewater. There's not going to be a significant amount of sewage effluent that's being discharged from the site. Really no different than a warehouse use or other similar use, if not less. But we believe that we have adequate public water and public sewer to satisfy the needs of the development. I would point out to you that Pannoni confirms what we believe, which on page 5, comment 8, they talk about the data center ordinance provisions relating to tree disturbance and tree removal. We believe our plan complies, and we're happy that the Pannoni review letter confirms that. There is a series of comments on page 6, comment 10, which carry over to page 7, requesting that we revise our dimensional tables. So for example, as we indicated before, the building height's 85 feet, the minimum setback is 100 feet. We're more than the minimum setback. We just need to make sure, in some places we listed the minimum setback, not the actual height of our buildings. Or in some places we listed our actual height of our buildings, not the actual setbacks. So we'll revise those tables so that they're consistent on the plan and on the table, but there's no indication that we don't comply with the dimensional requirements of the ordinance. We'll clarify the dimensional tables to confirm that. We submitted a pretty robust sound study as part of the application, and your ordinance imposed stricter sound standards than any other use in the township, and we were happy to acknowledge or to see that Pennoni reviewed it and confirmed that it appears that our sound study, our noise study, conforms and complies with the standards that you set out. At the actual conditional use hearing in front of the board of supervisors, we'll have that expert acoustician come in and testify to that record, but we're satisfied with the review so far on that. There's a comment in the Pennoni letter about this facility right here, and there's a provision in the ordinance which talks about DCE, and DCE is essentially data center accessory uses which generate noise. And there's a requirement that data center accessory uses that generate noise, there's several requirements, that they be set back a certain distance, that they not front a primary road, and or that there has to have an auxiliary building located between them. We don't believe that this facility right here qualifies as DCE, and we'll present testimony to that effect. We'll supplement our response to establish that, because we don't believe that two things. That electrical facility is by right in the district, regardless of whether or not it's part of a data center or not, number one. And number two, it doesn't qualify as DCE because it doesn't generate the noise that would otherwise trigger the DCE analysis. So we'll supplement our report to confirm that. But that's a comment that I picked up. On page 8, comment 13, there's a question about steep slopes. We will revise the plan to make sure or make clear that we are not impeding or tripping the steep slope regulations that are required by the ordinance. The data center ordinance adopts, by reference, bootstraps in a whole series of standards that the township has for industrial uses. Air pollution, noise, vibration, glare, and heat. And we're asked to supplement our application to address all those things, and we're preparing 2 reports that will come in which will deal with all of those issues in greater detail. But I will tell you that with regard to that standard relating to air pollution, any facility there that has emissions is going to be subject to what's called Title V, which is the state's program to regulate anything that emits anything, right? So generators, I would bet that the township here has a generator, an emergency backup generator in case power is lost. Now that probably is not small enough to fall under the Title V requirements, but it's the same concept. These backup generators that are attended to each one of these buildings will be subject to what are called Title V requirements. And so we're going to supplement our application with a report from an emissions expert to demonstrate that we comply with Title V. We accept as a condition that we'll comply with Title V, and that expert report will explain that the standards in place under Title V are designed to make sure that there's no noxious fumes, that there's no pollution, that it complies with all applicable regulatory standards and is safe. We touched on noise, which is one of your industrial standards. Your ordinance requires actually a stricter standard than in what's applicable to the industrial standards. We comply with that. There's also a reference to vibration. Our sound study references the fact that we comply with the vibration requirements, that there will be no noted vibrations off-site. If you think about it, these facilities that contain and house the computer equipment wouldn't work effectively or efficiently if there was a vibration problem. And And so to the extent that the generators or any other equipment cause vibration, they're on platforms, they're on systems that absorb those vibrations. There would be no vibrations felt anywhere off the property. There's a requirement that we demonstrate that the use will not create glare or heat from the use itself. Really, everything for this use is contained either in those buildings or in the courtyards. There's no glare inherent to the use. There's no heat inherent to the use, which will be spilling or leaving the site. There'll be standard lighting, and we're going to comply with all the township's lighting ordinances, but there's no glare or heat. There's another requirement that we demonstrate that there's no radioactive activity or electrical disturbance that will come from that. And we've been asked to supplement the application to include that. There's clearly no radioactivity, and there's no electrical disturbance as a result of this use. There's a requirement that we demonstrate that all fire and explosive hazards be stored and used consistent with all state regulations and federal regulations, which we agree to comply with as a condition. The generators will be operated either by by natural gas or diesel, and so to the extent that we're required to have diesel or natural gas on site, they will be stored consistent with any appropriate or applicable state or federal standard. There's also a requirement or a prohibition against outdoor storage. We accept that as a condition. There's a requirement that we have a comment about waste disposal, and we'll supplement our report. Just as I said before, the sewage that will come from this site is not inconsistent with the type of sewage that you would have basically in a warehouse, just toilets and sinks and normal use. There's a requirement that we establish that we will use and rely on power that complies with all the state's regulations, and we will supplement our report to that effect. We have a will serve letter from PICO confirming that we have 750 megawatts of power available to us, dedicated to us, subject to making the improvements that need to be made on site to satisfy that. All the costs of those improvements are on our client. We have a letter from PA American regarding water, which is also a standard that we're required to talk about or establish. We're confident that the water that's been allocated to us from the system, 1.3 million gallons, is adequate for our use. There are two types of data centers. There's data centers that are, the water primarily is used for cooling, and there are closed systems and open systems. And the closed systems use virtually no water. Think of it as a radiator. There's water that's filled into a system, needs to be topped off on occasion. And then there are open systems that require more water, but we believe that the water that's been allocated to us from the existing utility will be adequate to demonstrate and satisfy that. So I understand there are concerns about water, but we're not going and using water from anything other than what's in the public system. We've submitted a traffic report, and I'm not going to go into much detail on that. I think your traffic engineer has asked our traffic engineer to make some additional revisions, which we have the draft prepared. We'll submit it when we submit the balance of our things. But it's really important to remember that with traffic, this site was approved as a warehouse with hundreds and hundreds of trips, and this is a fraction of that in terms of traffic. So we don't think that it will have nearly the traffic impact that prior and other permitted uses would have here. With one other comment, two other comments I think we wanted to talk about. So one is, you'll notice that we have roads that cross these two floodplains. And in the original review letter, it asked us for an H&H study. So correct me if I'm wrong, but an H&H study is essentially a HEXRAS study, a study to show the impact that any disturbance near that water course would have on the flow of water. And our response to that is we don't think that's necessary for the conditional use, because to the extent that we have crossings, this is a conditional use hearing. When we come in for preliminary land development sometime in the future, the location of those crossings might move 10 feet, might move 5 feet, might move one way or another. And an H&H report would make more sense when the actual specific locations are specifically identified. They're gonna be in that general location, but their actual specific location to precisely do that study, we would defer until we come in. The Benoni letter was reviewed, updated about 3 weeks or 4 weeks after it was initially reported, and raises the issue of whether or not we're allowed to put those roads in. And we're going to examine that, but we believe that these are required roads and that the ordinance permits required roads, permits crossings of water courses and water resources if they are for required roads. It doesn't say private road or public road. We believe that that is a required road. And we're going to look at that closer, but that would be our position. The second thing to talk in general terms is about the relocation of Possum Hollow Road. I talked about that in our sort of the opening. Possum Hollow Road generally runs, it's hard to show on this, right? But it comes down, basically loops this way. Loops this way, sort of follows that creek. And there were earlier developments in the township for this area and that area, and my clients stepped into the shoes of those prior developers. And in reading the review letters and the comments from those prior developments, our understanding was that there was a desire to redesign Possum Hollow Road so that it's sort of like a Possum Hollow Road bypass. We submitted an application to the township about a year ago to have Possum Hollow Road where it exists vacated and to have the new Possum Hollow Road extension built. And we would anticipate that we would pick that back up when we come in for preliminary final approval, that there would be a renewed petition to vacate Possum Hollow Road and relocate it here. We would understand that's a condition of any approval of this area. At least that's always been our indication or understanding. It's something consistent with the township's master road plan. So high level, that's our application, that's our plan. I'm sure you have lots of questions, and to the extent that we can answer them, we're happy to. And to the extent that we're not confident enough to answer them because we don't have a particular expert with us tonight, take that question, and when we come back, we'll have more specific answers. But that's an overview of our application.
Okay, so we can give you questions, go back and forth, but we won't be able to provide any conditional use here because the application is technically incomplete at this moment in time.
We don't think we think it's like any other conditional use application where it's been reviewed and your engineers asked us to supplement, so we're willing to have it supplement. We don't expect you to vote on a recommendation tonight.
Okay. We'd
like to hear your input, hear your questions, so that we can come back. Hopefully we can have a review and move on from there. Okay. Yep.
What's your time frame to build this out, start to finish?
Yeah. So we have to be careful about what I say because there's an NDA in place with the anticipated user. And there's lots of things that have to happen, right? Tonight is one small piece of conditional use hearing, and we proceed after that. We then have to design all the land development plans. So I think at the earliest, my client would be, if we were to receive conditional use approval later this spring, and then we were to design the land development plans and come back, we would be submitting land development plans later this year or early next year. Could be a full year from now. After that process, then you could build it. So you're looking at a build out that could start anywhere from 3 to 5 years from now.
Total.
I think could start. I don't think it's going to start for 2 or 3 years. Just given the process of the conditional use approval and the land development application that would follow. Could be quicker.
What do you think as far as total build out of that whole complex, years wise?
I think it could be built in as short a period as 3 years, and as long a period as, it could be a much longer period.
Ed, thank you for your presentation. You have 8 buildings there for data center. Now, I know there's different type of data centers, correct?
There are.
Is that going to be the case here, or Are they all gonna be the same? I know there's,
Yes, we anticipate that there will be a single user, and that user will be having the same type of data center in all 8 buildings.
Okay. And I know you talked about the water usage. The closed loop cooling seems to be a more efficient way to do it.
It's a more efficient way to do it in terms of water consumption. It's a more efficient way to use it in terms of water consumption.
And the 1.5 million gallons of water, where do you get that from?
Aqua.
Aqua? They'll truck it in?
They'll truck it in, or we'll need to improve the facility to bring it there.
Okay. And that 1.5 million gallons,
I said Aqua, it's actually Pennsylvania, yeah.
that water, that 1.5 million gallons, is that continually used the whole time?
So it depends on the system,
Mhm.
but that would be the daily requirement,
Okay.
if it's an open system.
Is it recycled?
In a closed system, it's recycled, and in open, it's not.
You had mentioned about relocating gas lines and the roads and Possum Hollow Road. What's involved with relocating this gas transmission line?
So it's actually been done before. The gas line runs essentially from Costco down, right? And so instead it's going to be moving along the property line and then out. And, it runs, Costco's right there and Chick-fil-A's there, and it had to be relocated for that development. It had to be redeveloped as it crossed the road. So what's involved is talking to the company that operates the pipeline, coordinating with them, and doing it subject to their review and approval, and subject to the regulatory authorities that they are subject to.
And this gas line, if these buildings decide to use natural gas, this gas line is large enough capacity to supply these buildings for your generators, temporary generators or whatever.
Yeah.
If you go with gas.
Yes.
And the transmission lines, the new utility station, you mentioned that's Pico lines to the south there. They would, I'm assuming they would just tie into that area?
Correct.
Now, will they get their power from the nuclear power plant?
So I've learned more about power in the last year than I ever thought I would. I missed that day in law school. It took me a year to catch up. So and I joke that I am a generation removed from an Irish ditch there. So forgive me for not having an engineering degree or an electrical engineering degree. The power is on a grid, and to say that the power is coming from the nuclear power plant or coming from somewhere else is probably inaccurate. It's all on the grid. There's an advantage to it being right here. It's
Right.
obvious, right?
Right.
Do you have an agreement in place with Constellation to provide you with the power necessary?
We do, and it's included in as a supplement or an appendix to our application.
Are you, I don't know if you can disclose that, but are you getting any preferential rates for consumption once the property is opened? I know that's a concern in the community, that the cost is put back on the residents
Sure,
for the improvements of the infrastructure.
When we come back, I'll have a more definitive answer, but I've never heard that we're going to have a preferential rate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, for all the infrastructure improvements that Ed talked about, was all that work has to be poured by the developer. So sewer system upgrades, the substations, all that. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So all the infrastructure improvements have to be bored by the developer. Okay. So yeah, water, sewer, gas, the relocation of the mains. Now, for gas, for example, Energy Transfer Partners oversees that. They're going to piggyback onto our permit for the NPDS permit, and as we go through construction, they'll work with us to do the bypass. For the power, as it's coming in, they're going to build the substation, but we'll be providing the cost to build that substation and the transformers and the power lines and all that stuff.
So would you own that substation then?
So that you'll see on the plan, it says, utility substation, that's gonna, even though we're gonna pay to build it, it's gonna be owned by PECO.
Okay,
And then once you get it, as you get on the plan, it says user substation, that will be owned by the developer, or the campus, I guess, as a whole.
but is not a valid concern that the cost to the improvements of the existing transmission lines could be spread out through PECO, through our existing customers?
No, the cost of any capital improvement is borne by the applicant.
Okay. Another question, sorry, you want to pick on that, or?
No, the concerns that we all have in this room, of course, with data centers being so new, is the water usage, the sound, and the electricity. So we talk about the water, 1.5 million gallons being in a closed loop, so that'll be reused.
So if it's a closed loop, it's actually less than that, and the
Okay.
1.5 would only be on the, my understanding is it's only on the hottest days, and
Okay.
regular use, even if it was an open system, would be less
Is that per building, or is that for the whole,
for the entire site.
the entire site? Okay, okay. So we talked about the electrical use being passed on, and hopefully that doesn't happen. But how about the sound concerns? We know that there's been concerns about the sound, the buzzing, the vibrations. You said you had testing done, but how do we know is that a hypothetical test? Because the buildings and, of course, the cooler, the 45 chilling coolers on top, and the generators surrounding the
Yeah,
building?
great question. So it's modeling, which is exactly what the ordinance calls for, and there's a reason for that, right? Because you wouldn't build it and then test it, right?
Right.
So the model is based on a recognition that data centers like this and data centers, across the country, as they come on now, use recognized standards, right? Whether it's company A or company B or company C that creates a generator, those generators all have specific specs. And if you read the sound report, we've asked the sound acoustician to presume that certain things, certain types of equipment, certain standards, which are known and measurable, and presume that that equipment is located here in terms of its chillers and the generators. And based on what we specifically know from that type of equipment, what sound is it going to generate, and where will you hear it, and at what level will you hear it? And that's what the ordinance requires us to do. That's what the sound expert did, and we're confident that we comply with the ordinance from that perspective. And I would say that your ordinance imposed greater standards relating to noise than any other use in the township.
Right. Thank you, Ed.
So we know that data centers have different tier levels. Do you know what tier data center this is gonna be?
When we come back, if I'm allowed to tell you that, I will.
Okay.
We're under an NDA.
All right, my other question is, how is this beneficial to the township?
So, one thing we haven't talked about is, first off, the fiscal impact. And although it's not required that we demonstrate the fiscal impact, if I'm wrong, when I come back next month, forgive me, but we'll have a fiscal impact study which shows that the benefit to the township in terms of tax revenue for real estate taxes is well in excess of 10 million, possibly as high as 20 million. So that's the range. And obviously, given the protocol for real estate taxes in Pennsylvania, most of that goes to the school district. So there's a huge financial benefit to the school district. There is also a significant benefit in terms of revenue. The other benefits to the township would be that we're replacing uses that would have significant traffic impact on the community and removing a vast majority of the traffic from it. I think if you're talking about a benefit to the community, putting a good use, putting a use in it's immediately adjacent to a nuclear power plant. It's consistent with that type of heavy or large scale industrial use. It has significantly less traffic, significantly more tax revenue than any of those things would have. I think those are the significant benefits that I would point to. I also think that, first of all, your township board, you're one of the, to my knowledge, one of the first townships to adopt an ordinance to put standards and regulations in place to regulate where they go. In lots of communities, the argument's been made that a data center is a warehouse, and so that a warehouse can come in and a project can be approved as a data center under the standards for a warehouse. Your township had the forethought to adopt an ordinance to put regulations in place to limit, significantly increase setback, to limit them to areas where there's, I think it's 100 or 120 acre minimum, and to locate it in certain places, to require sound studies. And so I think this project complies with the ordinance, and I think your ordinance is a very aggressive or strict ordinance as it relates to data centers and data centers that have been approved elsewhere. Lots of places where data centers have been approved don't have the kind of protocol in place that you have to protect the community for the kind of concerns that you've raised.
Could you tell us what the expected lifespan of one of these facilities is?
I can't, but I'll get the answer for you.
Okay. I mean, I read a little bit, maybe 15 to 20 years, give or take.
There are clearly data centers which are been in existence and continue to exist for a much longer period of time than that.
So how many total backup generators are you proposing?
So each building has approximately 40. The smaller buildings probably have 35 to 40, and the larger buildings probably have 40 to 45.
And then how often do you test the backup generators?
Yeah. So different users use different standards, but as a rule of thumb, and it's referenced, there's some presumptions that are in the sound study. My recollection is that the sound study presumes that either only 70% of them are tested. Let me back up. When they're tested, they're not all tested at once. When they're tested, some users will test them once a quarter, some might a little bit more frequently, every other month, and they're only tested in series. So even though there's 35 to 40 generators per building, when they're tested once, twice, or 3 times a quarter, in that range, and they're only run for a short period of time, and they're not all run at once. So you'll never have a situation where the testing has all of the generators running for an extended period of time.
And they have to be run during the day, during business hours.
Correct. There's a prohibition against cycling or testing those on, or even using them at all during night, except in the instance of emergency.
Emergency,
They would have to
correct.
be used, right.
And the testing, you said, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's the type of regulation that you have in your
Right.
ordinance that lots of other
Yes.
places don't have.
And to Patricia's point, when you do test them, you don't know if they're tested for an hour at length or?
I'll confirm what that is.
Okay.
I wanted to circle back to water for a second.
Sure.
It sounded like you haven't decided for sure if you want to have an open or a closed system, right?
We think the project has sufficient water for an open system.
Right, so if there's an open system, can you talk a little bit about what happens to the water after it's used in operations?
Sure, it is then, so lots of it evaporates, right? And that water which does not evaporate is then discharged into the system.
The sewer system?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
If I may, one last note, as I said, on the utility side, the developer has to pay for all the improvements, but also from their end, utilities are regulated by the Pennsylvania Utility Commission. So, and in this case, it's water, sewer, gas, electric. They are obligated through their tariff to maintain pressure in the system, service to their ratepayers, all that stuff. So they can't, for an industrial user, they can't commit more water than they have, more or less, because then they'll be in violation of their tariff. Okay. So they have to go through all that, and have those agreements and studies in place before they can commit to that. And right now, we have will serve letters. There will be another level of investigations and modeling done when we get into planning and development through those utility companies.
The overall layout, you foresee that staying like that? As far as the building locations and stormwater management systems?
Yeah, so when we commit for preliminary and final land development, like I indicated, the crossings, they might move a few feet. There might be some slight adjustments to some of them, but in general, I think that's very similar to what the final plan will look like. Hasn't been fully engineered, to come in with specs for each building. I think, I forget who asked me how long it would take. It's Mr. Zasowski. I believe on the lower left is those buildings would start first and you move left to right. I think that's the current concept.
Is this a large scale data center as far as they go? They have 8 buildings. I mean, I'm sure they vary from
Yeah, they vary. I think that
campus to campus, but is this a large scale?
I think it's a pretty common size.
Common size?
I don't think it's larger than what you're seeing in terms of data centers today. I do think it's smaller than a lot of data centers that I've read about, but I think it's about standard.
And that substation right in the middle there, that's going to power everything?
Right there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so where that is, working, I guess it would be left to right, yeah. Just to kind of walk you through it. There it is. So here's the nuclear power plant's like down in here somewhere.
Right.
Here's a 500 kV transmission main.
Mm-hmm.
So what they're doing is you're pulling off of that 500 into this utility switch yard.
Okay.
That's gonna take that 500, step it down to 230, which is in here. So then that 230 is gonna go to the user substation
Okay.
and drop it down to 34.5. And then to feed all the buildings is gonna go underground duct banks. And so you're not gonna have wires going off.
It's gonna go underground.
It's all going underground.
Okay.
Are they coming underground from Pico to the substations, or is it aerial?
That'll be aerial. They're yeah, it's 230, so it's gotta be aerial transmission.
And they can give you the 750 you need.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, EJ.
Yep.
Is this going to be a completely closed campus when open?
Yes, that's a great question. Any facility like this, anywhere, is subject to security protocols. So it will not be open to the public. It's not like, people can drive through. It will be a secure facility.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Greta, but when this was the previous use, there was talk about trail extensions going through with Possum Hollow. You said we can't do that here now, correct?
Great question. So that is true, but if you recall, 2 things. One, this area down here contemplated, 300 or 400 additional residential units, which aren't going to be here. So if you talk about other benefits, some people would argue that 300 or 400 less residential units in the town is a benefit, right? But you were putting 300 or 400 homes here, and there was a discussion about a walkway to provide people in that development to walk through to access. So 1, you don't have those 300 or 400 new homes in that multifamily development, and 2, what's contemplated for the realignment of Possum Hollow Road will be a trail that runs along and parallel to that road.
Okay.
You just talked about security. Will this whole complex be fenced in, or it's just individual security at the buildings?
No, it'll be fenced in.
You'll have man access, there'll be security guards there 24/7, monitoring access coming off the Possum Hall Road.
Now, if this is completed, the 8 buildings, will they be different companies in different buildings?
No, that's unlikely.
Okay.
It's
It'll be
likely to be a
one
single operator.
Single operator?
So the purpose of the data center is to provide data, so what is the output of these buildings? Is there fiber optic lines gonna run everywhere? Like how does the output come out of this site?
Great question, because you need the fiber optic lines that are there. I don't know where we're showing them on the plan, but it does need to be accessed by fiber optics to get that.
That's relatively close by.
Yes.
What is that, a general data highway that's out there somewhere?
Yeah, they're in more places than you'd realize.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the telecommunication system is like the right side. Let me see. Sorry. You'll see an easement on the plans that kind of cuts through here.
That's right.
That's where those fiber lines come through, and then just each building just ties right into that system, right? Just feeds it, and data like goes back and forth between them.
Is that in place close by, or does that all have to be built up to suit your needs?
We'll currently bisect the property, the existing lines, so there's not going to be off-site improvements as far as that goes. That was your question?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other additional comments here from the planning commission? Questions at this time? No?
I got a couple of questions.
Okay, good.
I know a traffic consultant asked for a parking study.
Yeah, we have our supplemental traffic report will speak to parking.
And you've got, I don't know how many parking spots you have on the site, but how many employees you gonna have? I hear conflicting stories that these things don't generate traffic. Well, what generates traffic is your employees. How many employees do you see at these kind of facilities, or what you see here?
Yeah. Reserving the right to supplement when we come back, my expectation is it would be less than 30 people per building, per shift.
Around the clock?
Yeah, 3 shifts.
Yeah.
Okay.
720.
720 spaces?
720 people, right, in 3 shifts, so
Okay.
do that math, 200 and,
240 a
yeah.
shift.
Is that more site specific? Because I hear conflicting stories about data centers. They only need 5 people to come in,
Yeah,
one to turn on the lights and one to turn off the lights.
I heard that too.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing is, I've never heard 5, I've heard 15.
Yeah, I've just built 5.
Yeah, but
I've actually heard somebody say 2. So, but
I've heard 50. I'm using the word, I'm using 30 because I'd rather not tell you 15, and then when I get back and my client tells me no, the user's more, I can't imagine it's more than 30. I haven't heard anywhere more than 30.
when somebody said it was less than 10, I just didn't see that made sense.
It's a really big building.
Yeah. So, and what are these people are typically, because I know the machines are doing all the work. What are these people, what are they tasked to do? Are they for maintenance or just?
Yeah, they're tasked with maintenance, but they're tasked with maintenance with very expensive, very complicated, very sophisticated equipment. And so those, there's a range of employees and a range of salaries, but for the most part, they're skilled people.
Right. And not that you could disclose this or you even know this, but would they be on the higher side for salary?
I think there's a significant number of employees, and the employee average I would expect to be higher than the average employment in the local area.
Because they're more technical than.
Yes.
I don't want to say, I don't want to be downgraded anywhere, like not custodial. They're not there to sweep up the floors.
I'm sure that there are people who aren't skilled, and then there are many people who
Yeah.
have greater skills.
So, okay. Just to go back to the water, just to be clear, so it's clear in my head, the water source, you're not going to be drawing down on any local wells, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I know there's limited houses around here, but still, I imagine some of them are on wells, so I know that would be a concern.
Well, our application indicates with the water that we have, and I would expect that I expect that we're going to get approved, and I would expect that the township will hold us to what we demonstrate as part of our application, and so that if there's other water that's needed or something different, that means we come back.
Okay. Thank you for being honest.
Yep.
That's all I have.
So that brought up a thought. So in the future, we're building a data center today, new stuff comes out. Is it possibly, as we move on, it may need more power, or it may need more water? Like you said, I guess at that point, you'll come back, or the utilities have to give you more, or like, how would that work if you need more power as time goes on?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, but my expectation is that power and water demands will decrease, because that has been the history, right? It has not been an increase in power or an increase in water. For example, if you look at articles that talk about water, most of the articles that talk about water and water issues are before they had closed systems, and so there are more and more systems coming online that use more and more facilities that come online that use closed systems and less water. So I think the trend is to identify efficiencies, and so I don't expect that.
So there is a chance, if this build-out is over a number of years, which you seem to think it will be, that technology will advance also as far as water usage, electrical usage, cooling. There's a chance that the technology might get better for data centers.
When you Google, we've all Googled, right, data centers, and you see all the articles, right? Most of the articles, when I've done that, right, you're talking about data centers in places where those data centers were built 10 years ago, on designs that might be 10 years before that. And so what's being built 4 or 5 years from now is, several generations of technology removed from the data centers that have raised a lot of the concerns that everyone's talking about. The data centers that are being built today are different technologies, different protocols, different systems, and I would expect that to continue.
So, but to Ken's point, if, say, things become more efficient, so most likely water usage will go down, but say the systems become more efficient and require more power, you would have to go back in front of PICO, who would have to go through the PJM and the PUC to allocate that power. So it wouldn't just be like trying to use more, you're capped at what you can use until you get additional approval.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hey, Bill, I have one more question. Maybe I missed it. I hope I didn't while you guys were talking. I was talking. Our deputy fire marshal produced an email saying that more high-level studies are required. I imagine that's something we will handle here in land development. But as far as what is there a history? I mean, I know there's a lot of heat being generated in these facilities. I'm sure that's why you're cooling them down with water and whatever. What kind of suppression systems do you typically see in these kind of facilities? And has there been a history of incidents at these, because they are producing a lot of heat?
So, great question. I would expect after conditional use, when we come back for land development, what we will have as part of that is a collaboration with fire, police, emergency services in the township. So there are identified protocols Just like police departments and fire departments work with any big user or any big facility or any big institution in a community, so that there's a coordinated response. If somebody has a heart attack, if there's an accident, if there's a fire, any of those things, so everybody knows how to respond and how to respond appropriately. So there are very specific fire suppression systems in these buildings that aren't the fire suppression systems in this building or in the homes that we would now require. And we'll have coordination with the local fire department, the police department, so that they understand how fire is being managed on site if those instances occur. If an ambulance needs to come on site for whatever reason, that there's a protocol that they can get on quickly and efficiently, so that there's an effective management of the system from that standpoint. That's a weed within, that's really when you said we're getting into the weeds. When you're at a point when you have an absolute operator, that's when you need to connect the operator with EMS services to make sure that there's coordination in place.
Will you be providing more testimony on that area during the conditional use?
We will. We're reserving the right to finalize those plans.
Yeah, I understand, because that is a requirement of the conditional use standards.
Yep.
It is, it will not negatively impact neighboring properties and et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Okay, right, or in public health, traffic safety, et cetera.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And guys, going back to the sound again, there's going to be 45 chillers on the roofs of each of the centers, and about 30 to 40 generators on the side of each building.
Yeah, the smaller buildings have about 35 plus or minus, and the larger buildings have a little more than 40. So between 35 and 40 for the smaller, a little more than 40 for the larger. And then I think it's 40. I'm going to say 45 plus or minus chillers on the rooftops.
And they would have an acoustic wall built around them?
Yeah, they'll all be skirted or shielded, correct. And that was taken into consideration in the modeling. So the acoustician, okay, so there's going to be presumed that there's 35 or 40 generators for each building. Presume there's the chillers that are going to be there, and make certain recommendations in the report, and presume certain things that we expect are going to be conditions. That when those chillers have to be skirted or screened, and they have to be skirted and screened consistent with the acoustician's recommendations to manage sound. Same thing with the generators.
This is a big place. What's the general maintenance on this? Is it daily? Do you shut down a building I guess you can't shut them down. It's 24 hours, 7 days a week. Do you shut portions down to maintenance, to check everything out, make sure all systems are running properly?
Yeah, my understanding is that there are, I think the term they use is racks, right? Within each building there are different components, and there's regular maintenance that happens throughout.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there anything that stood out to this location that your client decided to pick here as opposed to other locations where you said the zoning requirements were less stringent?
Well, a couple reasons. One, it fits in terms of its close proximity to a very significant, substantial other industrial use, right? The nuclear power plant. It's close to those 500 kV wires, right? It has the internet fiber optic network access right there. I mean, those are the three things that jump out at you: close access to power, and access to the fiber optics, and it's almost 200 acres. Yeah.
Any other planning commission comments or questions?
Good.
All right, at this point, I'd like to turn over the questions to the public here. There was a sheet out there, sign up. If people didn't read it or get the rules there, we just want to make sure that all the residents have a fair opportunity to be heard in an orderly environment. The rules are each speaker must be a resident or taxpayer of Limerick Township. Each speaker will be limited to 2 minutes we'll have a timer here. Greta will have the clock, countdown clock. All comments must be courteous and not contain any offensive language. Yelling, chanting, and other disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. Questions must be directed at the witnesses and not board members or any other speakers. No signs are permitted in the township. We don't have any of that. Again, disruptive behavior will not be tolerated, and we can waive any of these requirements at our discretion at any time. So anyone not following these procedures will be asked to leave the building. Go up to, when you want to speak, we'll use that microphone up there in front. You have the timer set.
I live on 32
Up to the
Sand
mic.
Hook Road, literally across the street from that place. My question is, your stormwater management does not look adequate for the amount of buildings you got there. I'll tell you right now, because it just runs into my property every time. What you have there is not going to be adequate for any kind of stormwater management. And what are you going to do with the sewer? You're saying you're moving the sewer line?
Yes.
Where would that go to?
So well, I don't want to pin it on your time, Joy. Want me to respond to him, or?
No, that's only
Okay.
2 questions.
Sorry about that. So the sewer system, right now kind of bisects the property. There's a 15-inch main that follows the river, and then there's 2 lines that come across from the shops, or from the store. So we're gonna have to, what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut off, well, not cut off, but intercept the lines that are coming across the road from Light Cap, put a pump station there, it's gonna wrap around, and the 15-inch main that's on the north side of the river or stream is gonna come to the south side of the stream. We're gonna tie it back in there, and then it'll be fully isolated because the perimeter fence or secure fence will be, the sewer line will be outside of that, because it'll be on the other side of the street. The stormwater management system, what's not shown on there is some, we did some preliminary calculations, and there could be underground systems, infiltration. We have to, when we get into the final design and planning, that's when we have to comply with all the BMP standards for the MPDS and stormwater management system and erosion sediment control, and then all of that will be done under planning. We can't start construction till we have our MPDS permit that proves that we will not discharge off-site.
And how much wetlands are you going to disrupt over there too? 'Cause there's a lot over there.
Well, so the light blue areas show the wetlands. I don't believe there's any disruption.
Because there was a previous project at the corner to the left side of that they kicked out of here because of it disrupted too much of the wetlands over by one of the properties you purchased.
Other than the crossings, other than the road crossings.
Yeah, are you talking about the basin?
Yeah, right over where you're at, right in that area.
Yeah, so there's a basin there that mapped, and we have a wetland study that's part of the application.
Okay.
But
I didn't hear
I
nothing
believe
about
that's where
wetlands.
pardon me, sir?
I didn't hear nothing about the wetlands, but there is wetlands to that left side where the yellow is, where that property is where the sewer cut.
Okay.
But that whole corner is all full of wetlands, if I'm not mistaken. We're right next to where you're talking about.
That corner. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's
But
all
adjacent to
property.
that property also has wetlands too, correct? Or no?
I don't
You have
believe
one
so.
building, no?
It would show up on our mapping, so, and then, as I said, that map is in our report, I don't have it in front of me.
How do township residents get a copy of this?
Is the application
Do we
on?
have a plan online?
We only have the site plan online, but anything that you want to see that was submitted with the application, come into our office and we'll, give you ability to look at it.
So we got a FOIA request, right? Request for Information Act, we can do that in the office?
Yes, you can do that too.
And then we get a copy of it or whatever, because I did that
Correct.
before with the other development.
Yes.
Okay. And one other, the 10 acres to the left of Saratoga Road, you guys are doing nothing with that out front of power plant?
Right here.
Correct.
That's power plant property.
Oh, so you're on the other side of Saratoga Road too?
No, let's see, Saratoga,
Saratoga Road's right there, right?
yeah, so we're
The other
just,
side of that's another 10 acres.
We're on the north of it.
MCD two owns, correct? Used to be old Providence Properties, 100 or 55 townhomes, when you go there, you're not doing nothing with that property.
Do you wanna see the existing features plan?
Yes, please, sorry.
That where you're at on Sanatog Road there, to the left, that was out front of the power plant, was supposed to be another development from Providence Properties.
Yeah, zoom into this.
So, this is the current Sanatog Road,
Yep.
and this property here is part of the project.
Yes, so we would be doing some development in there. And then this is the power plant property. Yeah, that would be on the proposed.
Yeah, that's your 10 acres, right?
Yes,
So the red line, Sanatog Road. That's right.
correct. That line's gonna, that road is gonna be relocated around.
Oh, is it?
Yes, sir.
Because I'm the adjacent property right next to it.
Right.
Yes. And the house is right across the street from Brandon.
Okay, so yes, so that would be, this is gonna come from here.
Yeah.
It's gonna loop around to there.
Yeah,
and then
right
come
there,
back.
arrow is right there, that's my driveway.
Okay,
So that's where Sanatog Road's coming out, now that's your plan.
it's gonna go in, oh, sorry, sir. Yes, it's gonna come down this way, and then 90 degrees here, and then come down and around.
Looking to 08 Sanatog Road.
We're okay to move on?
Excuse me?
No, is that, are we okay to move on?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have any other questions or comments?
Yeah, that's a lot.
Preston Luke Weller, 2 Woodmont Court. I have a question about 3 things. First of all, it's water. I heard 1.3 million gallons, but that's 1.3 million gallons what, a day? I presume that's a day, but nobody said whether it was a day or a month or a week or whatever.
Yes, that would be a day.
And Pennsylvania's a regulated riparian state. There's allocations for water. That's a significant allocation of water. And I presume that if you have a will serve letter, American Water is now including that in their allocation in some way. But they have to go through some regulatory agencies and hoops to do that. Because that's the equivalent of about 4,000 to 5,000 homes. So that's a lot of water that for future use might have been reserved for future homes that won't be available. And there isn't a lot of other resources that are available to provide that extra water. So that's an issue that American is going to have to resolve. That's going to be an issue for you also at some point. You have a will serve letter from PECO for 750 megawatts. I'd like to see that in terms of what percentage that is of the total output of Limerick. It's not insignificant. It's not 1%. It's significantly more than that. And again, all that infrastructure is built to serve existing and future people throughout the whole PJM network. You mentioned it's a grid. So that's going to have an impact on what's available for other people and the incremental cost that's going to be borne for every additional person who needs generating capacity. That's my comment.
Thank you.
Did you want to respond to that? Sorry,
13 Lauren Lane.
1 moment.
I noticed you're tapping off the 500 lines, going to an on-site PECO substation.
Yes, sir.
Substations require maintenance, so what happens when that substation goes down for maintenance? Are you planning to run your generators for the duration of the substation outage?
Well, that will be owned by PECO. We'll have to have somebody testify against that. I'm not an electrical
So it is conceivable that you would run somewhere around 200 generators for the time that a substation is in a maintenance outage.
I don't believe PECO is allowed to, that they have, there's probably a level of service that they have to maintain. So I don't think they could shut the whole thing down. Like, for example, there has to be an adjustment to the system when they have to tap into the line. And that's like a 4-year process just to coordinate like a 2-day thing.
Right, I'm just concerned because you're a direct tap off a 500 kV line, right? So you don't have a secondary path of power coming in other than that 500 kV into the PECO substation. If it suffers a failure or maintenance outage, then you have to run your generators to provide on-site power.
So the switch yards and the substations have, they're modular. So you can have, and I can't remember, it's like a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. So they can have one of those modular sections shut down for maintenance, but you have 2 other portions of the sub that are able to carry that load.
So you're saying that the substation that can suffer the maintenance and you will not have interrupted power?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Kaylee Wolf, 33 Jessica Circle. First off, just a general comment that I'm vehemently opposed to the development of this. But my question is that you've been talking about this like hypothetical or future secretive client that's going to be actually using this facility. I'd like to know when that will be shared and when you'll know whether it's going to be a closed system, open system. Is that before this project is approved, or is that after building has begun, after approval?
Yeah, no, it's a fair question, and I can't tell you, I don't have the answer to give you.
Good to know.
Hello, Reverend Leroy. I'm at 2301 Hunsberger Drive. I just wanted to circle back again to the water. I know that's a big issue, but as a minister of Word and Sacrament, I care a lot about water. And you know, 100,000 gallons is used by every American per year. So you're using way more than that per day. So if we know already, as the gentleman said, that closed loops are more efficient, why aren't we seeking a closed loop for this?
It may very well be that we develop a closed loop, but we presented testimony and evidence, and we will present testimony and evidence about the water that's available to us, and we will stay within those parameters.
Okay, but you presented today saying that it was, as the plan stands, your application currently stands, it is an open loop using 1.3 million gallons of water every single day. Is that correct?
Respectfully, I did not say that.
I thought I heard that.
No, what I said is our application demonstrates that we have the ability and access to that amount of water, and we're not going to do anything that exceeds what we have presented.
Okay, well, I really heard you say that, so I really hope that that was a misunderstanding, but there are others in this room that are indicating that, so I really appreciate not being gaslit, please.
I'm not gaslighting you. I'm telling you that I mean.
Okay, I want to move to my
transparent.
other question, sir,
Sure.
because you said that that's still being figured out. My other question is about the traffic issues. You're saying that you're going to substantially lower the traffic issues because those 300 to 400 homes aren't going to be built, but you're going to reroute an entire huge road leading right into that man's driveway. So how is that going to lessen our traffic concerns going to Costco, right, on a Saturday morning? And also, how long are those road projects that you have actually going to take place while we're all being redirected around the township?
So the point I made about traffic is to compare this use with the previously approved use, which could be developed, which would be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of square feet of warehouse, which would have significantly more traffic impact on Lightcap Road, where you go to Costco, and that's not being built. And what will be built for the data center will have substantially less traffic. My point about traffic is that this proposed use is significantly less in terms of the impact that other permitted uses and other approved uses could have.
Yes, you did mention that, but you also mentioned the homes not being built. Thank you.
Rick Fiddler, 47 Better Road. I want to stick with the water issue. You're really not making any commitment, as I understand, for open system or closed system, correct?
I'm not.
So why would an operator choose one over the other? Is it a cost issue?
Different operators use different systems. you know, think of any large commercial activity. If there's an operator that uses a particular system, that's the system that they use, period.
Okay, but being that the closed system is so much more efficient, it would seem to benefit the community to have a closed system and require that, if that's possible. Yeah, if it's an open...
Is that a question?
Oh, well, if it's an open system, you said that a lot of the water would evaporate. I would think that a lot of the water that would go into the sewer system would be pretty close to a boiling point. Is that accurate, or?
No, it's not accurate.
No? Okay.
It's a good question, but the water isn't discharged until it's reduced in temperature, although it's an open system, it's not mixed with anything else, so it's just water coming out, and it doesn't go into the system at a level or a temperature that would have a negative impact on
Okay.
the system.
And
I guess one of my concerns is that, you know, Pennsylvania American Water can certainly make a commitment to you that they can supply the water, but we don't know where it's going to come from. If they don't have it available, they're going to dig wells. And if they have to dig wells and deeper wells, those of us in Limerick who survive on well water, we're going to see our wells go dry. And that's a concern I think that a lot of people are going to have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Schlegel. I'm from 320 Laurel Road. I'm going to make a few points, ask some questions I'd like the council to think of in my community, and then if there's time, feel free to respond. So I work in investment banking as an analyst, and one thing I will note is that when you're not sure of who your client is, that is a problem. The NDA is something that I would be wary of. Just to remind you as well, the Constellation Energy owner of the power plant for Limerick had posited to the East Coventry Township earlier last year and was denied in December for their various reasons of not wanting to put a data center in there. It is surprising to me that we would consider a firm from Rochester, New York, where Labella is from, instead of a local owner, to come in and build a facility that Constellation was willing to build instead. Back to the fact that we're not quite sure of who is behind that. When you aren't sure of who is behind something because you don't have best information in front of you, then it does put you at a higher risk and disadvantage to be lowballed and being taken advantage of in a community. Additionally, I would like to think of, are there any better uses for this land that we could use? I know right now it's not doing anything, but we don't have enough affordable housing as it is. Additionally, when it comes to the health concerns, the Harvard Business Review does note that within a mile of data centers, there is an increase in respiratory concerns, particularly from diesel particles, that are expected to cost $20 billion for healthcare costs by 2030. On top of that, the National Health Institute also indicates that they expect about 1,300 deaths that are going to be from data centers that are not well taken care of. Now, a life of data center, typically 15, 20 years or so. It sounds like only 30 jobs per shift, 720. I think there could maybe be something that's placed in there that has much more jobs. Now, outside of that, I think that we should additionally consider if there are any concerns that we have about the infrastructure. This is going to be running 24/7. What would the demand be there? If there are demand spikes that are faster than the upgrades that we have, how long do upgrades take compared to how fast this facility comes online? And what happens during heat waves or grid emergencies? How will our grid be affected by this? How much will our costs rise when it comes to water costs and electric? And additionally, will this be temporary for the job increase or long-term? Will it be jobs in our actual community or outside of it? And additionally, are there going to be backup systems that are used for those diesel generators involved? How long will they be running? How long will they be tested? What pollution are we expecting to see from them? And if this is going to have any transparency behind it, are those numbers going to be publicly reported? Can residents see those numbers? And if so, I know you mentioned that that would be available for the plans for it. Would there be more significant plans put forward and more rigorous testing that is equally available to the community on a regular basis? Outside of that, I think additional things to consider is who is also seeing any tax breaks from this or tax liabilities from this, and who is signing on to those NDAs. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any Did you want to respond to any of those?
No, thank you. I appreciate the questions.
Okay.
Evening. As our guests tonight are standing on authority of their positions, I am going to as well. I am the Global Threat Intelligence Manager for a Fortune 10 company based in Conshohocken, and it is my duty day to day to protect the lives, safety, and health of 47,000 employees worldwide. I can tell you for a fact, from a corporate standpoint, there is no benefit to a data center for the local township, the local populace. It is only a risk. Our gentlemen in front of us are not going to answer these questions tonight because they are not posed to them. They are posed to you and rhetorical for them because it is in their best interest not to answer these questions so that their plan is approved. You did in fact say that your plan would not exceed that amount of water, but the plan was to utilize that amount of water that is available from American Water. Just so we're all clear, that is 547 million gallons of water a year. Compare that to the average American, and you were talking about tens of thousands of Americans worth of water usage. Particular water systems are chosen due to a number of factors, including money granted for the project by state and federal grants, and is absolutely a financial decision from the data center operator in order to maximize profits and shareholder value. Power and water use consumption in data centers has only ever increased with new technology. To say that there is a chance that it will go down is to ignore the reality of every previous iteration of a data center. Sound study presumes, this is what was quoted by our guests tonight, means that there is no clear answer nor plan for how these generators will be tested at this current time. A point of clarification, the developer and lawyer both attested that this is not a closed loop system and will use 1.5 million gallons a day, 470 million a year. That's all I have for you tonight. Please consider this as you're considering putting a data center in Limerick. The use case scenario for this property would benefit the people of this township much more than a data center that does not produce anything except profit for the people running it. And an NDA should be your first large red flag that this is not a good idea.
Care to respond to any of that?
Nothing.
Hello, Jen Wolf, 33 Jessica Circle. I don't really have a question like the others before me. I just wanted to voice my opposition to this plan. I do appreciate your presentation tonight because, excuse me, I did learn a lot. I do take issue with some of the things that were said. You know, I used to work for a college, and one of the selling points of the college was that, you know, send us your students and we're going to prepare them for jobs that don't even exist yet because things are changing so rapidly and we don't know what's going to come in the future, but your students are going to be prepared. And I feel like, you know, you mentioned earlier that you referenced something about 2 years ago that Limerick Township had put something into place to sort of like guide the regulations of this. And I feel like, you know, that's all well and good, but 2 years ago, how was anyone supposed to know what these data centers would really entail? So I know you referenced, you know, data centers that have been in existence for 10 years and they were in planning 10 years before that. But those are not the articles that I am reading. I am reading about new data centers and the terrible, horrible things that they bring to the community around them. And it feels, you know, I know you're just capitalizing on a system that exists, but it feels predatory to come in here and take a space that was, you know, zoned for a warehouse. And come on, we all know what that means, a warehouse, not something that was creating noise and using water and depleting our resources. So I just wanted to share that so everyone knows that I'm with a lot of people in this room and a lot of people who couldn't be here tonight and a lot of people who are commenting on the live stream on Facebook that we are against this in our community. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Bruce Himmelstein. I live at 105 Landis Creek Road, or Lane, depending on the weather. I'm also 35 years in as a seasoned physician executive, so I do have some public health questions. As you all know, the rise of medical knowledge is exponential. So for those of you who watch TV and see ads for things like cancer treatments and so on, the same will happen in public health. So the standards that we have today for environmental impacts like emissions, EMFs, noise, particularly the buzzing noise that was referenced earlier, is preliminary. I looked at the medical literature, there are a handful of studies, but 10 years from now it's going to be different. So I'm curious how the potential owner or whoever is running this facility will engage long-term with the Department of Public Health and with our environmental assessment agencies to understand on an annual basis the impacts and how we incorporate new understanding of these impacts, especially on kids, over the life of the project and beyond. That was a question.
So the question is, how are we going to respond to future changes in science and medicine?
And the impact of the data center on public health, yes.
Yeah, I think it's a great and interesting question. The forum here is a land use application where my client is entitled to make an application and demonstrate that it meets the requirements of the ordinance. In addition to that, when my client and the operator operate the facility, they're going to be subject to whatever regulations come as a result of all those developments in science and research and health, independent of this action, to the extent that those regulations are put in place, right? I mean, you can only ask any of us to follow the law that exists today.
That is a fair answer, thank you.
Hi, Terry Arthur, 74 Keene Road. So I'm not directly across, but I'm literally a quarter mile. I walk regularly that direction, and I think it's a shame that we're taking, again, undeveloped land, and we have to rip it apart. I did see a plan. I don't see what your plan is. I know what the plan was over in our neighboring township, which was taking and decimating the land, taking every tree, everything down. I'm assuming this will be the same, that it'll be totally level, and then we'll build up buildings. I know you say there'll be no impact to traffic, or very little compared to the supposed homes that aren't going in now, but not for the years that it's going to take to build this. We're going to deal with truck traffic and construction traffic and the dirt and the rumblings and all the other just things that put people out of their way for, yes, more money in your customer or your client's pockets. And sadly, I kind of think Limerick Township, you guys are selling this out, that this is coming back to you guys are getting money in your pockets too. Because I haven't heard you say, what is your plan going to benefit you or you or you or you, me? What is your plan for a data center? How is it going to benefit me as a resident a quarter mile away?
So right now there is a community impact statement, like Attorney Campbell said, that's being prepared, that will be presented. I don't know if it's going to be at the next meeting or at the hearing, regardless. So in
Can
that,
I interrupt for a second? Is
Yeah,
that
sure.
also going to include the community benefits that you're going to put out to us?
Yes.
With like park improvements and trails? I think they put that in over there for Penhurst. They're going to tear down a historical place, but they're going to put in a park, but they already put money in a park. So you're going to tear something down, subject us to health health concerns. We already live next to Limerick Power Plant, believe me, and I built after they were built, and they were there, my choice. But there are health concerns. So your benefits are you're going to give my future generations maybe a park.
there's going to be a study prepared. I don't have it right now, so.
Okay.
I will say though, in regards to the plantings, Limerick does have in place a very substantial woodland replacement ordinance, which we had to go through. And you look at the plans, we have an exhibit that shows the greenway replacement.
Wait. See, that was the same thing they said over there, but let's just be real about this. You're going to take full-grown trees, completely wooded. Possum Hollow is a beautiful stone back road that's completely wooded, mature trees, completely destroy them, but you're going to put a few saplings that may or may not survive. And if they don't, oh well, you did your plan, you sufficed, you put the green back in, but they might not be there, but you checked off the box. No, I'm sorry.
It's about 6,200 trees, I think, is on the agreement?
Yes.
6,200
6,200.
saplings, let's be real. I don't care if it's 62,000. They're saplings, they're small trees, they're not full-grown trees. And what about all the, nobody's talking, and I'll sound like the green tree hugger, but what about all of the wildlife? Like, I have herds of deer that come through because of Costco and that whole conglomerate over there, and then the new apartments. I mean, you guys just keep taking it up, And like I said, I'm sorry, I love Limerick Township. I've lived here 35 years. But you guys make decisions that I don't think any one of these are local to that property. Would you want it in your backyard? Greta, would you want it in your backyard? I don't think so. You don't have to answer. I don't want to put you on the spot. I happen to know you personally or have talked with you. But I guess my point is I get development. I get we all want to better and this and that, and nobody wants it in their backyard, but we really don't. We have Limerick Power Plant, who we don't get. I don't care what anybody says. We don't get any benefits from that place. We were told we would. We were told you were going to get money. We don't. And I haven't heard anything where we as taxpayers are going to get a tax break because you're going to develop undeveloped land and put it in the center. Thank you.
No further comments from the public? We thank you for your time tonight, the presentation and everything, and